Get off the floor, old woman. You look like a dog dragging itself to die.
My knees. I can't do chemicals anymore. I have a doctor's note.
He laughed.
A doctor's note? Nobody cares if you're hurt, old woman.
The label says it's dangerous for people with...
You know what's dangerous? A used-up mule thinking she still has rights.
He snatched the paper from her hand, tore it in half, dropped the pieces on the wet floor.
Pick those up too while you're down there.
An elderly janitor on her knees in the back hallway of a home improvement store. 67 years old. A manager standing over her, coffee in hand, smiling. 3 employees watched from the doorway. Nobody moved. But there was a 4th person watching, and what he just witnessed was only the beginning of something much worse hiding inside that store. Solomon Fletcher built his company from the stockroom up. 26 years ago, he was the kid hauling lumber in a home improvement store, earning minimum wage, sleeping in a car he couldn't afford to fix. Now he owned 25 locations across 3 states, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling glass, and the kind of reputation that got him invited to panels about leadership with integrity. On his desk, next to a stack of quarterly reports, sat a framed photograph. A woman in a janitor's uniform. Tired eyes, cracked hands, smiling anyway. His mother. She cleaned office buildings for 30 years. Never missed a shift. Died at 59. Heart gave out on a Tuesday morning, mop still in the closet, time cards still punched in. Nobody from that company came to the funeral. Solomon looked at that photo every single day. It was the reason he started this business, the reason he paid above market, the reason every policy in his company started with one question. Would this have protected her? But today, something on his desk made him wonder if any of that mattered. A manila folder. Store number 09. Attrition report. His COO had flagged it during the quarterly review, but called it a minor regional variance. Solomon opened it anyway. The numbers were clean, revenue steady, customer satisfaction above average, labor costs, the lowest in the chain. On paper, store number 09 was a model location. He almost closed the folder. Then he noticed the appendix, employee separations, 12 names in 3 years. He scanned the list, ages, tenure, demographics. His finger stopped. 4 employees over 60 had resigned in 20 months, all listed as voluntary, all people of color. He picked up the phone. Nadine Wells walked into his office 14 minutes later. She was his HR director, sharp, cautious, the kind of person who chose her words the way a surgeon chose incisions. She sat down. Didn't wait for him to ask. "I flagged store number 09 6 months ago," she said. "Regional told me it was handled." "Handled how?" "That's the problem. I don't know. I sent a follow-up. Never got a response. I sent a second one. Got a one-liner back. Store manager addressed the concerns internally." Solomon turned the folder toward her. 4 employees over 60. 20 months, all voluntary. Nadine looked at the page. Then she looked at him. "That word is doing a lot of heavy lifting, Solomon." "Who's the store manager?" "Craig Dutton. 8 years at the location. Never had a formal complaint reach corporate." "Never?" "Not one." Solomon let that sit. A store with the highest turnover in the chain, and not a single complaint had ever made it past the building. That night, he pulled up the company's anonymous ethics hotline. One entry from store number 09, filed 11 weeks ago. No name attached. 4 words. "They're hurting people here." He read it 3 times. Then he closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. A board member. Another message about expansion timelines and capital allocation. He didn't open it. Instead, he walked to his closet, pulled out a pair of jeans he hadn't worn in years, a plain gray polo, at the bottom of the shelf, work boots, his father's, worn at the soles, cracked at the toe. He hadn't put them on since college. He laced them up. They still fit. He called his COO the next morning, told him he was taking a personal week. Didn't say where, didn't say why. The drive to store number 9 took 3 hours. Suburban sprawl, strip malls, a Waffle House, a church with a marquee that read, "God sees what you ignore." He pulled into the parking lot at dawn. It was mostly empty. One car sat near the employee entrance, a 15-year-old sedan, paint peeling on the hood, a handicap placard hanging from the rearview mirror. He didn't know whose car it was. Not yet. He clipped a name tag to his shirt. Sam. Checked his reflection in the rear view. No watch, no wedding ring, nothing that said corner office. He stepped out. The air smelled like asphalt and cut grass. Somewhere inside that building, a 67-year-old woman was about to start another shift on her knees, and Solomon Fletcher, the man whose name was on the deed, was about to find out why. Grace Bellamy had been awake since 4:30. Not because she wanted to be, because her knees wouldn't let her sleep past the swelling. She sat on the edge of her bed for 10 minutes, pressing her palms against her kneecaps, waiting for the joints to loosen enough to stand. On the nightstand, 3 prescription bottles, blood pressure, arthritis, an inhaler she'd started using 6 months ago when the coughing got bad. She got dressed in the dark. Her grandson, Marcus, was still asleep in the next room, 8 years old. She'd been raising him since his mother, Grace's daughter, left 2 years ago. No note, no forwarding address, just a boy and a grandmother and a 2-bedroom apartment that cost more than it should. Grace drove to store number 09 in the same sedan she'd had for 15 years. Handicap placard on the mirror. Child's backpack on the passenger seat. She'd drop Marcus at school on days when the bus didn't come. She clocked in at 6. The back hallway smelled the way it always did. Bleach, floor wax, and something chemical she couldn't name but could taste at the back of her throat. She pulled on her gloves, thin latex, too big. The fingertips were torn from yesterday. She'd asked for new ones twice, never got them. By 9 o'clock, she had mopped the stock room, scrubbed the employee restroom, and hauled 2 bags of garbage to the dumpster out back. Her right knee had locked up once near the loading dock. She leaned against the wall, waited it out, kept going. She'd been doing this for 2 years. Before that, 30 years as a school secretary. She'd loved that job, knew every student's name, filed every form on time, never once got written up. Then the district cut her pension, just like that. A budget line deleted in a meeting she wasn't invited to. 30 years, gone in 1 vote. She found the janitorial job at 65. Not because she wanted it, because she needed the insurance. Without it, her medications alone cost $1,100 a month. That morning, Grace did something she'd been thinking about for weeks. She filed a formal complaint. She'd written it by hand the night before, sitting at the kitchen table after Marcus went to bed. Neat handwriting, precise dates. The complaint described 3 things: the chemicals she'd been asked to use without ventilation, the overnight shifts she'd been assigned 6 days in a row, and the doctor's note Craig had ignored for 2 weeks. She attached the doctor's note. She attached a photograph of the chemical label, the small print that read, "Hazardous to individuals with respiratory conditions. Ensure adequate ventilation." She walked into Craig's office at 9:15 and placed the paper on his desk. He looked at it. Then he looked at her. "Close the door," he said. "I'd rather leave it open." He smiled. "Suit yourself." He picked up the complaint, read it slowly, out loud, every word, projected just enough that the 2 cashiers near the hallway could hear. So, You're saying the chemicals are hurting you, and you want, what, a different assignment? He set the paper down. Grace, you're a janitor. Janitor's clean. That's the deal. The doctor said, the doctor doesn't work here. I do. He leaned back. You know how many people your age would kill for this job? With benefits? I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking you to follow the safety label. Something shifted in his face. The smile didn't disappear. It hardened. He picked up the complaint, held it with both hands, and tore it, slowly, deliberately, in half, then in quarters. He let the pieces fall on his desk like confetti. You should be grateful anyone still hires a woman your age. The hallway went silent. A cashier looked down at her register. Terrence Odom, stocking shelves at the end of aisle 6, stood frozen, a pricing gun in one hand, his breath caught somewhere between his chest and his throat. Grace didn't move. She didn't cry. She looked at Craig and said 5 words. I have a copy. Craig's smile cracked, just for a second. Surprise, then recalculation. His voice dropped half a register. Good for you. Now get back to work. You're on overnight chemical deep clean starting tomorrow. 6 days. He picked up his coffee. And Grace? Next time you want to waste my morning, don't. She walked out. In the hallway, her hands shook. She pressed them flat against the wall, partly to steady herself, partly because her knees were threatening to buckle. Terrence watched from behind the shelf. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the floor. In the break room, Dawn Whitaker leaned toward a part-timer and whispered, Last person who filed a complaint was gone in 2 weeks. They both went quiet when Craig walked past the door, coffee mug in hand, smiling. After her shift, Grace sat in her car. Engine off, hands on the steering wheel, she opened the glove box. Inside, a folder, the copy of her complaint, the doctor's note, 3 photographs of chemical labels, a handwritten timeline, dates, incidents, every retaliatory action Craig had taken since she first asked for non-chemical duties. She didn't just keep a copy, she'd been building a file. 30 years as a school secretary had taught her one thing. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. She closed the folder, tucked it back, turned the key. Marcus was waiting for dinner. Back inside, Craig sat alone in his office. Door closed. He opened his laptop and typed a performance memo. Grace Bellamy, repeated insubordination, failure to follow supervisor directives, attitude concerns. He changed the date, 2 weeks earlier, printed it, signed it, dropped it into her personnel file. He opened the drawer. Inside, 5 more memos, different names, same language, same template. All employees of color, all over 55. He closed the drawer and finished his coffee. Solomon showed up at the employee entrance at 6:50 the next morning. The back of store number 09 looked nothing like the front. The front had clean signage, stacked displays, and a greeter named Paula who smiled at every customer who walked in. The back had cracked asphalt, a dumpster with a broken lid, and a security camera mounted above the door, red light dead, not blinking, not recording. He pulled the door open. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaner and old cardboard. A schedule board hung on the wall to the right, laminated, color-coded, covered in handwriting. He stopped. Read it. One name appeared in the overnight column 6 times in a row. Grace Bellamy. No one else had more than 3. He kept walking. Craig Dutton's office was at the end of the hallway, door closed, a muffled voice inside, laughing about something. Through the window, Solomon could see a regional performance trophy on the shelf, a framed Employee of the Month plaque that hadn't been updated in 11 months, and a filing cabinet pushed against the far wall. He noted the cabinet, moved on. The break room was small, One working microwave, one table with a wobble, a handwritten sign above the sink. Clean up after yourself. Aggressive capitals, underlined twice. On the wall, an OSHA workplace safety poster. Solomon walked closer. The poster was 3 years out of date, and the complaint hotline number at the bottom had been scratched off. Not faded, scratched, with something sharp. He touched the surface. Deliberate. Craig appeared at 8:15. He shook Solomon's hand. 2 seconds, limp grip, eyes already somewhere else. Sam, right? Yes, sir. You lift, you shelve, you clock out. That's the whole job. Questions? No, sir. Good. Craig was already walking away. Don't bother me unless something's on fire. Solomon watched him go. 26 years of running a company, and Craig Dutton had looked through him like he wasn't there. Hired and dismissed in under 30 seconds. He wondered how many people in this building had been looked through the same way. He spent the first hour stocking canned goods on aisle 9. He watched the floor. Who moved how? Who talked to whom? Who flinched? When Craig's voice crackled over the intercom, "Terrence, register 4 now." Solomon saw 3 employees stiffen at the same time, shoulders up, eyes down, the kind of reflex that takes months to learn. Then he saw her, Grace Bellamy, pushing a mop cart down the back hallway, 67 years old, knee braces visible below her pant legs. Alone. The cart had a broken wheel. It pulled to the left with every push, and she had to correct it with her hip. She didn't look up. She didn't look at anyone. Solomon stood at the end of the aisle and watched her disappear around the corner. The hallway light flickered once above her head. He thought about his mother. Same hallway, different building, same silence. In the stockroom, he met Terrence Odom, mid-30s, quiet. The kind of man who made himself smaller than he was, shoulders forward, voice low, eyes that checked the exits before finishing a sentence. Terrence showed him where the pricing gun was, handed it over without small talk. Solomon tried anyway. Been here long? 3 years. How's the manager? Terrence looked at him. Really looked. For the first time. Then he shook his head. You seem like a nice guy, Sam. He turned back to the shelf. Nice guys here. They don't last. He walked away. Solomon stood there, pricing gun in hand, listening to the hum of the loading dock refrigerator and the faint sound of Grace's mop cart squeaking down the hallway. Something was very wrong in this building, and 3 days was all he had to prove it. Solomon spent his first full day watching. He stocked shelves, enough to stay invisible, but his eyes were on the schedule board, the hallway, and the people who moved through them like they were walking on glass. By noon, he had seen enough to know the schedule wasn't random. Every closing shift belonged to employees of color. Every single one. The white cashiers had morning rotations and weekends off. A part-timer named Kyle, 22, had called in late twice that week. Craig praised him on the intercom at 3 o'clock. Kyle, great job keeping the front clean today. That's how it's done. Kyle had arrived 40 minutes late and spent most of his shift on his phone. Meanwhile, Grace was on hour 8. She'd mopped the entire back hallway, scrubbed the loading dock on her hands and knees, and hauled chemical buckets to the employee restroom. A room with no windows, no fan, and a vent taped over with packing tape. Solomon walked past her once. She was coughing, deep and wet, the kind that bent her at the waist and left her gripping the mop handle with both hands just to stay upright. You okay? He asked. She straightened, forced a smile. Just dust. It wasn't dust. He could smell the chemicals from 6 feet away. He looked at her hands, swollen knuckles, cracked skin. The latex gloves were too big and torn at 2 fingertips, chemicals soaking through. That afternoon, he checked the break room bulletin board. The MSDS binder, required by federal law to be accessible to every employee, was gone. Not missing. Gone. A clean rectangle of dust where it had sat, perfectly preserved. Solomon ran his finger across the dust line. His jaw tightened. Lunch break. Parking lot. Solomon sat on the curb with a sandwich he didn't eat. Dawn Whitaker sat down 3 feet away. 4 years at the store. Warm face. Tired eyes. There was a woman here. Eleanor, Dawn said. 62. Worked here 9 years. Craig wrote her up 3 times in 1 month. Attitude, attendance, insubordination. Boom, 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 like he had them ready in a drawer. What happened? Gone by the 4th week. Voluntary resignation. She made air quotes. She was crying in Craig's office the day before she left. Did anyone report it? Dawn looked at him, not with anger, with exhaustion. Report it to who? Craig is the report. That afternoon, Solomon volunteered to reorganize the stockroom. In the back corner, behind a shelf of discontinued paint cans, he found a cardboard box, unsealed. Inside, 6 personnel files, 6 performance memos. Every employee, a person of color, 4 over 55. Attitude issues, not receptive to feedback. Not a team player, resistant to scheduling adjustments. Attendance concerns, unreliable during peak hours. 6 different names, the same 3 phrases, rotated, rearranged, but identical in structure, like they'd been copied from a template, because they had. Solomon photographed every page. He was heading back to the floor when he heard Craig's voice through the cracked office door. On the phone. Laughing. Nah, she won't file anything. She's 67. Where's she gonna go? A pause. More laughter. Exactly. She's got no options. That's the whole point. Solomon stood in the hallway, fists clenched, knuckles white, tendons tight. He forced his hands open, breathed once, walked away. Not yet. The next morning, Grace was assigned to deep clean the employee restrooms with a commercial-grade degreaser. Solomon read the label from across the hallway. Hazardous to individuals with respiratory conditions. Use only in well-ventilated areas. The employee restroom had no ventilation. The vent had been taped shut for months. 12 minutes later, he heard her coughing. He walked to the doorway. She was leaning against the sink, one hand on the porcelain, the other pressed flat against her chest. Her eyes were watering. Her lips were slightly blue. "Ma'am, you need to stop." She shook her head. "If I stop, he'll write me up." "You can barely breathe." She looked at him. The math of a 67-year-old woman with no pension, no savings, and a grandson who needed dinner every night. "I can't afford to stop." She picked up the mop. That evening, Solomon checked the OSHA poster in the break room one more time. 3 years out of date. The complaint number scratched off with something metallic. The MSDS binder, gone from the shelf. The safety complaint number, destroyed. The security camera at the back entrance, dead for months. The personnel files, buried behind paint cans. Craig had removed every path an employee could use to report. Solomon stood outside Craig's office after hours. Through the window, lit by the hallway fluorescent, he could see the desk clearly. The MSDS binder, sitting behind Craig's computer monitor. Not lost, not misplaced, deliberately hidden from the employees who needed it. This wasn't negligence. This was a system, designed, maintained, and protected by one man. He sat in the rented car at 9:15, called Nadine. "I need every separation record from store number 09 in the past 3 years. Names, dates, demographics by morning." "How bad is it?" Solomon looked at the store through the windshield. Dark, ordinary, the kind of place you'd drive past without thinking twice. "It's worse than the hotline said." Nadine's email arrived at 6:14 the next morning. Solomon sat in his hotel room, laptop open on the bed, coffee untouched on the nightstand. He clicked the attachment. A spreadsheet, color-coded, 12 names highlighted in yellow, every employee who had separated from store number 09 in the past 3 years. He scrolled slowly. 10 of the 12 were people of color. 6 were over 55 at the time of separation. Every single one was listed as voluntary resignation. Not one had a formal exit interview on file. Not one had a complaint logged in the corporate system. 12 people, 3 years, 0 complaints reaching corporate. He sat back. The math didn't work, unless someone had made sure the math never reached anyone who could read it. He made 2 phone calls that morning. The first, Eleanor Burgess, 62 years old, 9 years at store number 09. Her name was 5th on the spreadsheet. The phone rang 4 times. A woman picked up. Her voice was careful, the way people sound when they've stopped expecting good news from unknown numbers. Ms. Burgess, my name is... I work with the corporate office of the company you used to work for. I'm looking into what happened at store number 09. Silence. 3 seconds. 4. What happened? She said it flat, not a question. A wall. Yes, ma'am. I'd like to hear your side. Eleanor exhaled, a long, slow breath that carried something heavier than air. I was there 9 years. 9 years. Never late, never wrote up. Then Craig, Mr. Dutton, he started writing me up. 3 times in 1 month. Attitude, attendance, insubordination. Her voice tightened. I wasn't insubordinate. I asked why my shifts kept changing. That's all I did. What happened after the write-ups? He called me into his office, closed the door, told me I had 2 choices. Sign the resignation letter he'd already typed up, or he'd terminate me for cause. No reference, no unemployment, nothing. She paused. I signed it. I didn't know what else to do. Where are you now, Ms. Burgess? Another pause, longer this time. Living on my daughter's couch. 8 months now. I can't afford my medications. I had insurance through the store. When I left, I lost it. My blood pressure medication alone is $400 a month. Solomon closed his eyes. His hand tightened around the phone. Ms. Burgess, I'm going to make this right. That's what people say. I know. But I'm not people. And this call is being documented. The second call went to voicemail. A former stalker, 60 years old. Her number had been changed. She was gone, absorbed into the silence Craig had built. That afternoon, Solomon went back to store number 09 for his last shift as Sam. He was in the stockroom sorting freight when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Grace Bellamy, standing in the doorway, hands clasped in front of her, the way people hold themselves when they've made a decision that scares them. You're the only person who asked if I was okay, she said. In 2 years. The only one. Solomon set down the box. You don't have to explain. I want to show you something. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a folder. Not large, maybe 20 pages. She held it out with both hands like it weighed more than paper. He opened it. The copy of her complaint, the one Craig tore up, her doctor's note, 3 photographs of chemical labels printed on plain paper, and a handwritten timeline, dates down the left margin, incidents on the right. Every retaliatory action Craig had taken since she first asked for non-chemical duties. Neat handwriting, precise. The hand of a woman who'd spent 30 years filing documents, organizing records, making sure nothing got lost. I know nobody's coming to help, she said. I just wanted proof that I tried. Solomon turned to the last page. A medical report from 3 days ago, her doctor's assessment. Patient presence with worsening chronic obstructive pulmonary symptoms consistent with prolonged chemical inhalation in non-ventilated environments. Early stage COPD confirmed. Continued exposure risks irreversible damage. Immediate removal from chemical contact recommended. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of scrubbing with restricted chemicals in a sealed room, and her lungs were now paying a price that might never reverse. Craig had the MSDS binder on his desk. He knew which chemicals were dangerous. He knew Grace had a respiratory condition. He assigned her anyway, the day after she filed her complaint. Grace's voice cracked. 43 years I've worked, 43, and this is how it ends. On my knees in a hallway nobody sees, breathing in something that's killing me. She pressed her hand against the shelf. Her shoulders shook. She didn't sob. She trembled. The kind of crying that happens when the body runs out of ways to hold it in. Solomon held the folder. His hands were shaking. "This is going to end," he said. "I promise you." Grace searched his face. She didn't ask who he was. She didn't ask how. She just nodded. Slowly, like a woman who'd stopped believing in promises a long time ago, but was too tired not to hope. That night, Solomon sat in his hotel room. The bed was covered in paper, Nadine's spreadsheet, Grace's folder, his own photographs of the performance memos. He made one call. "I need you at store number 09 tomorrow morning, 7 sharp. Bring a full HR team and a labor compliance officer." He paused. "And bring legal." His attorney's voice was careful. "What are we walking into, Solomon?" Solomon looked at the papers spread across the bed. 12 names, 6 templated memos, 1 hidden MSDS binder. 1 woman with poisoned lungs who still came to work every morning because she couldn't afford not to. Everything I should have seen 2 years ago. The front door opened at 7:02. Solomon Fletcher walked in. Not Sam, not the quiet stock clerk in the gray polo. Solomon Fletcher, tailored navy suit, white shirt, no name tag. Every step carried 26 years of ownership behind it. Craig stood at the end of aisle 1, coffee in hand, smiling, the automatic smile he wore for everyone above him and no one below. He looked at Solomon. 1 second, 2, 3. The smile collapsed. His eyes moved from Solomon's face to his suit, to his shoes and back. The color left his cheeks in a slow drain, like someone had pulled a plug somewhere behind his ribs. "Morning, Craig." Craig set his mug on a shelf display. It tipped slightly. He didn't notice. Solomon didn't go to Craig's office, didn't pull him aside, didn't lower his voice. He walked to the center of the sales floor and stood in front of every employee on the morning shift. 14 people. Terrence Odom near register 3. Dawn Whitaker frozen mid-step near the break room. Grace Bellamy at the back, both hands on her mop cart. "My name is Solomon Fletcher. I'm the founder and CEO of this company. I own every store in this chain, including this one. I've been here for 3 days, and I've seen enough." Craig took a half step forward. "Mr. Fletcher, I had no idea. Sit down, Craig." Craig stopped moving. Solomon laid the evidence on a folding table, 1 piece at a time. "The schedule board, every closing and overnight shift for 20 months, assigned to employees of color, not a single exception." He set it down. "Performance memos, 6 employees, all people of color, all over 55, identical write-ups, same phrasing, word for word." He looked at Craig. "You didn't even bother to change the template." Craig's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "The MSDS binder. Federal law requires it to be accessible to every employee. You removed it from the break room and hid it behind your monitor. You knew what those chemicals could do." "I can explain. You had 3 years to explain. Sit down." Craig sat. Solomon's voice dropped half a register. not louder, quieter. She's 67. Where's she gonna go? Craig's head snapped up. Your words, Craig. Tuesday, 2:14 p.m. The door was cracked. I was in the next aisle. Craig went white. Not pale. White. That's not... I didn't... Solomon turned to Nadine. She stepped forward with the spreadsheet. 12 employees separated in 3 years, 10 people of color, 6 over 55, all voluntary, not one exit interview. She looked at Craig. I flagged this 6 months ago. You told Regional it was handled. It wasn't. Craig's voice cracked upward. I'll call my attorney. A man in a gray suit near the front door raised his hand slightly. Solomon's corporate counsel. Already present, already briefed. Craig went still. Solomon picked up a single sheet of paper, walked it to Craig, held it out. Effective immediately, terminated, access revoked. Security will escort you to collect your belongings. Craig took the paper. His hand trembled. He stood, looked around the room, at the cashiers, the stockers, the greeter, the faces he'd scheduled and memoed and mocked for 3 years. Nobody looked away. For the first time, nobody looked away. He walked toward the exit, past the paint aisle, past the mop cart where Grace Bellamy stood. He didn't look at her. She didn't look down. She stood straight, eyes forward. He pushed through the front door and was gone. The room exhaled. Terrence let out a breath he'd been holding for 3 years. His shoulders dropped. The pricing gun clattered against the counter. Dawn pressed her palm against her mouth. Her eyes were wet. The kid from the stockroom, 19, hadn't said more than 10 words in 4 days, whispered one word. Finally. Grace pressed her hand against the mop cart handle, steadied herself. Not because she was weak, because the weight of 3 years had just lifted, and her body didn't know what to do with the lightness. Solomon didn't pause. He didn't let the room settle into silence long enough for doubt to creep back in. Craig was gone. But Craig was never the whole problem. Craig was what the problem looked like when it wore a name tag and carried a coffee mug. The real problem was the system that let him operate for 3 years without a single consequence. Solomon turned back to the 14 employees still standing on the sales floor. Some were staring, some were crying, some were perfectly still, the way people get when they've been underwater for so long that breaking the surface doesn't feel real yet. He spoke the way he always spoke when it mattered, plain, direct, no corporate padding. What happened in this store didn't start with Craig Dutton. It started with me. I built this company. I wrote the policies, and somewhere between the corner office and this floor, I stopped looking. He paused. That ends today. He started with the immediate. Effective right now, every employee in this store will receive a full back pay audit. If your hours were shorted, if your overtime was denied, if your schedule was manipulated to reduce your paycheck, it will be found and it will be corrected. Every dollar. He turned to Nadine. She nodded. Already on it. Second, the chemical storage closet is locked as of this morning. No employee touches those products until a full OSHA-compliant safety review is completed. New equipment is being delivered today. Proper gloves that actually fit, ventilation masks, and cleaning products rated safe for enclosed spaces. He walked to the break room wall, pulled the outdated OSHA poster off the nail, folded it in half, and set it on the counter. In its place, Nadine taped a new one. Current year, complaint number intact, legible. Next to it, the MSDS binder, reprinted, mounted in a clear wall bracket with a label. Every employee has the right to read this. If it goes missing, call this number. Below the label, a phone number, direct line to Solomon's office. Then he turned to Grace. She was still standing by the mop cart, same spot, hands still on the handle. She hadn't moved, not because she couldn't, but because she wasn't sure the ground beneath her was solid yet. Grace. She looked up. You're reassigned. Effective today. No more chemicals, no more overnight shifts, no more floor work. He walked toward her, stopped 3 feet away, close enough to be heard without the rest of the room straining. There's a desk in the admin office. It's yours. Full pay, full benefits. Your medical treatment, the COPD, the respiratory therapy, all of it, is covered by this company, starting today. Grace stared at him. Her lips pressed together. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was calculating the way she always did, checking if the math was real. Why? She said. Because someone should have done this the day you were hired. She nodded. Once. Slowly. Her hand finally let go of the mop cart handle. Solomon made 3 more announcements before the morning was over. First, every voluntary resignation from the past 3 years would be reviewed. Every former employee would be contacted, reinstated if they wanted to return, full settlement and back pay if they didn't. He stepped away from the group and made the first call himself, standing near Register 1, in earshot of anyone who wanted to listen. Eleanor Burgess picked up on the 3rd ring. Ms. Burgess, this is Solomon Fletcher, CEO. We spoke yesterday. He paused. Craig Dutton has been terminated. Your file has been reviewed. And I'm calling to offer you full reinstatement. Same position, same seniority, full benefits, retroactive, or, if you prefer, a complete settlement including back pay and insurance coverage for the time you were without it. Silence on the line. 5 seconds. 6. I don't... Eleanor's voice broke. She swallowed. Started again. I don't need the job. I just want someone to say it wasn't my fault. Solomon closed his eyes. The sales floor was quiet. 14 people were listening. It wasn't your fault, Ms. Burgess. It was never your fault. And as of this morning, that's in writing. He heard her exhale. Then a sound, not a word, not a sob, just the sound a person makes when something they've been carrying for 8 months finally gets set down. Second, Terrence Odom. Solomon walked to Register 3 where Terrence was standing, still holding the pricing gun he'd dropped 5 minutes ago, still looking like a man who wasn't sure if he was allowed to breathe normally yet. Terrence, you've been here 3 years. You know this store better than anyone in this building. Solomon paused. Shift lead position. Effective Monday, if you want it. Terrence looked at him, then at the schedule board, then at Dawn, who was standing 4 feet away with her arms crossed and the smallest hint of a smile breaking through. About time, Dawn said. Terrence almost smiled. Almost. He nodded. Yeah, I want it. Third, Solomon pulled a printed QR code from his jacket pocket, walked to the break room wall, peeled the backing off, and stuck it right next to the MSDS binder. This is a direct anonymous reporting line. Not to your manager, not to regional, to me. He tapped the code. My office. If something's wrong in this store, or any store, this is how it reaches someone who can actually do something about it. He turned to the room. And starting next quarter, a rotating team from corporate will work floor-level shifts at random locations. Unannounced, no warning, no cleanup window. He paused. Because if I have to put on work boots to find the truth, then the system I built isn't working, and I'd rather fix the system than keep lacing up boots. Then he did something that wasn't on any agenda. He turned to the group and said, Grace, would you like to say anything? Grace looked at him, then at the room. 14 faces, some she'd worked beside for years. Some had watched Craig tear up her complaint and said nothing. Some had whispered about her in the break room. All of them were looking at her now. She pressed her hands flat on the table, pushed herself up. Her knees ached. Her lungs ached. But she stood. I've worked 43 years. Her voice was quiet but steady. 43. I never asked for anything special. She paused, swallowed. I just wanted to be treated like I was still a person. The room went still. Then Dawn started clapping. Slow, steady, not performative, instinctive. Then Terrence, then the kid from the stockroom, then the cashiers, then the greeter, one by one, like a wave that didn't need permission. Grace pressed her hand against the table edge, steadied herself, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she smiled. Solomon stood to the side. He didn't clap. He didn't need to. He looked at the framed space on the wall where the old OSHA poster had hung, blank now, waiting for something better. He thought about his mother, the cracked hands, the tired smile, the time card still punched in on the morning she died. He'd made a promise. 30 years ago, standing in a funeral home that smelled like carpet cleaner and lilies. He hadn't kept it, not fully, not in time, but he was keeping it now. My mother cleaned floors, he said. Not loud, not to anyone in particular, just to the room. She came home every night with cracked hands and a sore back. She never complained, not once. He paused. She died at 59. Heart gave out. Nobody from that company came to the funeral. He looked at Grace, then at Terrence, then at Dawn. I built this company so that would never happen under my name again. I failed. Today I start fixing that. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. The room understood. The schedule board was the first thing you'd see past the employee entrance. It had been repainted, fresh white background, clean grid lines. The names were distributed evenly. No one had more than 3 closing shifts per cycle. No one was assigned 6 overnights in a row. The color coding was gone, replaced by a simple rotation that didn't need a decoder ring to understand. Next to the board, the MSDS binder, mounted in its clear wall bracket. Untouched, unremoved. The QR code beside it had been scanned 14 times in 30 days. Solomon knew because every scan pinged his office. None of the 14 reports were complaints. Most were questions about overtime policy, about break schedules, about how to request accommodation. Small things. The kind of things people only ask when they believe someone is actually listening. Grace Bellamy sat at a desk now. Not a mop cart, not a hallway floor. A desk. In the admin office, next to the employee onboarding station. It had a computer she was still learning to use, a stack of printed forms she'd organized by category on the first day, and a small plant someone had left there with a card that read, "Welcome." No name on the card. She didn't need one. She had her suspicions. The handwriting looked like Dawn's. Her new role was part-time, employee onboarding support. She helped new hires fill out their paperwork, walked them through the benefits package, answered questions about scheduling, the kind of quiet, organized work she'd done for 30 years before anyone decided she was too old to matter. She'd added 1 page to the onboarding binder herself. Handwritten first, then typed by Dawn, then printed and laminated. Title, Know Your Rights, Employees Over 55. It covered accommodation requests, safety reporting, and 1 line at the bottom Grace had insisted on. If something feels wrong, it probably is. You are allowed to say so. A new hire read it on her second day. She stopped at Grace's desk afterward. Did you write this? I did. Has anyone ever actually used it? Grace looked at her. You just did. Terrence Odom held his first team meeting on a Tuesday. He stood at the head of the break room table, the new one, round, not rectangular, because someone in corporate had read a study about how table shape affects group dynamics and decided to act on it. Terrence didn't know about the study. He just knew that he could see everyone's face, and they could see his. He was nervous. His hands were in his pockets. He pulled them out, put them on the table, pulled them back. Then he spoke. I'm not Craig. He paused, let it sit. And if I ever act like him, you tell me, out loud, in front of everyone. I mean that. A few people laughed. Not uncomfortable laughter, the kind that breaks tension because it recognizes truth. So here's my first question as shift lead, Terrence said. What's one thing you need from me? Dawn didn't hesitate. Just listen. Terrence nodded. He pulled a pen from his pocket and wrote it down on a napkin. Done. What else? The room opened up. Not all at once. Not like a dam breaking. More like a door that had been locked for 3 years finally swinging open on its own weight. Dawn Whitaker sat at the break room computer the following week. She'd pulled up the company's internal management training application. The cursor blinked on the last question. Why do you want to lead? She stared at it for a long time. Then she typed, because I know what it's like when nobody does. She hit submit before she could second-guess it. Solomon came back 3 weeks later, not undercover, front door. His own name, his own suit. Grace saw him from across the floor. She was walking, not mopping, not hauling, not kneeling, walking from the admin office to the break room with a stack of onboarding packets in her arms. She stopped. He stopped. She nodded. He nodded back. No words, no speech, no applause. Just two people who understood what the other one had done and what it had cost. Solomon walked through the store, past the paint aisle, past the lighting section, past the hallway where he'd first seen Grace coughing into her sleeve. He stopped at the janitor's cart parked against the wall. New handle, new bucket, new wheel that didn't pull to the left. He looked at it for a long time. He thought about his mother, the mop she never put down, the shift she never finished. He kept walking. In the parking lot, Grace's car sat in its usual spot. Same 15-year-old sedan, same peeling paint, but the handicap placard was gone from the rearview mirror. Her new medication, covered by the company, was working. The COPD hadn't reversed, but it had stabilized. Her breathing was better, not perfect, but better. Her doctor said the lung damage would stay, but it wouldn't get worse. Not anymore. She sat in the driver's seat after her shift. Engine off, hands on the wheel. On the passenger seat, a grocery bag. Chicken, rice, green beans. Marcus liked green beans, but only if she cooked them with garlic. She looked at the store through the windshield. Same brick, same signage, different building. She turned the key and drove home. 6 months later. Grace Bellamy stood in the employee onboarding room at store number 09, holding a printed checklist and a cup of tea she'd made in the break room microwave. Across the table sat 2 new hires, both younger than her grandson, both nervous, both filling out their first-day paperwork with the kind of careful handwriting people use when they want to make a good impression. She walked them through the benefits package, the scheduling policy, the accommodation request process, and when they reached the last page of the binder, her page, the one she'd written, she let them read it in silence. One of them looked up. "This is real? We can actually do this?" "Every word," Grace said. "And if anyone tells you different, you come find me." Down the hallway, Terrence Odom was running the morning shift briefing. 6 employees, round table, no closed doors. He'd started every briefing the same way for 5 months now. "Anyone got something I need to hear?" And by the 3rd month, people had started answering. Dawn Whitaker was gone most Tuesdays now. Management training. She'd passed the first 2 modules and was halfway through the 3rd. The instructor had asked her to mentor a new cohort starting in the fall. She said yes before he finished the sentence. Eleanor Burgess didn't come back to the store. She took the settlement, back pay, insurance coverage, and a written letter from Solomon Fletcher stating that her separation was involuntary, her record was clean, and the company owed her an apology. She framed the letter. It hung on the wall of her new apartment, the one she moved into 6 weeks after the call. Solomon sat in his corner office. The quarterly report was open on his screen. Store number 9's numbers were steady, not the best in the chain, not the worst. The attrition report folder sat in his drawer. Empty now. He looked at the photograph on his desk. His mother, cracked hands, tired eyes, still smiling. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The most dangerous lie in any company isn't told by one bad manager. It's told by the system that lets the reports say everything's fine, while a 67-year-old woman is on her knees, scrubbing poison off a floor, wondering if anyone will ever notice she's still a human being. How many Grace Bellamy's are on their knees right now in buildings that look clean on paper? How many people with the power to walk through that door are choosing not to? If this story made you think of someone who's been working their whole life and still gets treated like they don't matter, share it. Hit subscribe. Because every time you watch, you tell us to keep telling these stories. And someone out there needs to hear this one.
Crack didn't just lose his job, he lost the silence that kept him powerful. But here's what I keep coming back to. Grace Bellamy didn't wait to rescue. 43 years of work, and when the system told her she didn't matter, she didn't break. She documented, she kept copies, she built a fire at her kitchen table after putting her grandson to bed. Because 30 years as a school secretary taught her one thing: if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And Solomon, he didn't walk into the store because he was a good CEO. He walked in because he remembered his mother's cracked hands, because he knew the distance between a corner office and a mop bucket is exactly as far as you choose to look. So here's what I want you to sit with tonight. When someone tells you everything's fine, whose silence is making that sentence possible? And how many people right now are keeping their heads down, not because they're weak, but because being strong costs more than they can afford? If this story reminded you of someone who deserves better, share it. Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Solomon's shoes? Because someone out there needs to hear this one.